They were sipping mimosas, laughing under string lights like nothing ever happened, like I didn't exist. I stood in the doorway of Shoreline Haven, half-drenched from the Atlantic spray, holding the deed they were all about to regret ignoring. "Put those glasses down," I said, loud and clear. "This beach house? It's mine." Everything stopped. Olivia's jaw dropped mid-selfie, Mason knocked over his cocktail, and my mother, ever so composed, clutched her pearls like she'd seen a ghost. My father? He just froze, eyes locked on the paper in my hand like it had slapped him across the face. They hadn't invited me. Not to the family reunion. Not even a text. But they'd rented my house, paid full price through a property manager with no clue who owned it. Classic Harper arrogance. Assume you own the world, until the world answers back. You ever been left out by the very people who raised you? Then watch them panic when they realized they'd underestimated you? Stick around. The twist? It's only just beginning. Hit that like button, subscribe for the full story, and drop a comment if you've ever had to prove your worth the hard way. If you think that entrance was awkward, you should have seen the last time I shared a table with the Harpers. Picture a postcard Charleston mansion, white columns, Spanish moss, the whole 9 yards. My dad, Robert, likes to remind everyone the house has been in the family since 1885, as if square footage were a birthright. Mom, Linda, still keeps her Miss South Carolina tiara in a glass case next to the Waterford crystal. And my siblings? Mason trades leveraged buyouts in a midtown office with a view of the Chrysler Building, while Olivia turns brunch photos into six-figure brand deals. Me? I was the kid soldering wires in the garage, sneaking Lisbeth Salander novels under AP government textbooks. Prep school teachers marked bright but distracted on every report card. Dad translated that as future Harvard lawyer, no excuses. He'd drop LSAT practice books on my desk the way other parents left lunch money. Mom signed me up for debutante cotillion so I could network. I bailed after lesson 2. Network cables were more my speed. They hate unpredictability, so I served up a full plate the day I declined Harvard Law and pitched them my travel tech startup instead. Dad's face went brick red, like somebody had shorted his favorite stock at market open. "Possibility isn't a plan, Sydney," he said, folding his monogram napkin with all the tenderness of a cease and desist letter. Mom just blinked, mascara flawless, before asking if app people even carried health insurance. Mason shook his head, sipping a $200 Cabernet. Olivia Liv tweeted the whole meltdown, captioning it #family-drama, of course. Then came the group chat purge. One by one, blue bubbles vanished from my phone. Thanksgiving invites got lost. A family photo hit Facebook with me cropped out so cleanly you'd think I was never born. If you've ever felt your heart drop through the floorboards of your own childhood home, you know the weight that moment carries. But here's the thing about weight. You can let it crush you, or you can turn it into muscle. When Dad cut my credit card in half and Mom boxed up my bedroom trophies, I packed one carry-on, laptop, hoodie, and $900 in rolled quarters and crumpled 20s. That was 3 years ago. Tonight they're standing in my foyer, wondering how the invisible daughter just flipped the script. Stick around. Next, I'll show you how a sofa in a Miami co-working space became the launchpad that brought me back to this beach house with a deed in my hand. 3 years back, the cheapest one-way ticket out of Charleston dumped me at Miami International with a backpack, a busted-up Dell, and just enough cash for 4 nights in a hostel, 5 if I skipped dinner. I chose Wynwood because the Wi-Fi was free and the murals felt like permission to start over. Day 1, I cold emailed every accelerator within a 100-mile radius, pitched my eco-routing travel app to blank stares, and slept under a flickering neon flamingo that buzzed like a broken conscience. By week 2, I joined the graveyard shift at a Cuban cafe on Calle Ocho, $12 an hour plus tips, and all the cortaditos I could chug. I'd scrub tables till 3 a.m., walk 5 blocks to the 24-hour co-working space, and code till sunrise. The security guard, Eddie, would slide me oatmeal cookies and say, "Don't let the dream repossess you, kid." No idea what that meant, but I saved every crumb. literal and metaphorical. I blew through 3 versions of the app before a UI designer I met over a busted Keurig suggested a pivot. Target millennial road trippers who wanted carbon offsets baked into their itinerary. Sounded niche enough to matter. We sketched wireframes on napkins, hacked a prototype during Miami Hack Week, and demoed for a panel of VCs who looked like they'd rather be yachting. 48 hours later, we took second place, no check, but a month of free office space and, more important, a Slack intro to Coast Range Ventures. The partner there, Jenna Brooks, grilled me like an FBI agent who'd skipped lunch. What's your moat? Your CAC? Your runway at 0 revenue. I had answers to none of it, so I told her the truth. I'm running on caffeine and spite. But I'm not quitting. She laughed, wired 50 grand as a pre-seed, and said, prove you can turn resentment into recurring revenue. Cue the montage nobody sees. A crash course in Delaware C-Corp, 10,000 lines of ref actor. Betting my last $72 on Facebook ads that flopped so hard the account rep called to make sure I was okay. I wasn't. But anger is cheaper than Adderall. I cold-called hostel chains, surf shops, even truck stop diners, anyone who'd list on our platform. Bookings trickled in, then poured when a YouTuber with a van life channel shouted us out for planting a tree every 50 miles booked. Overnight, we were handling 6 figures in monthly volume. Investors who'd once ghosted me were suddenly sliding into my inbox with quick catch-up, subject lines. I picked Coast Range for the seed round, 600 grand wired on a Wednesday, team grown to 7 by Friday, company Slack lit up like Times Square on New Year's. The Wall Street Journal labeled us the Patagonia of travel apps. Mom would have framed that headline if she'd known it existed. I marked the moment by buying a real mattress, memory foam, queen size, 84 inches of proof I'd moved past futons and sleeping bags. Then the local NPR affiliate called, asking for an interview. I almost turned them down. Launch bugs don't debug themselves, but Eddie the security guard said, take the mic, Sydney. History favors the storyteller. The segment aired during drive time. Downloads spiked 300% before dinner. 6 months later, I was eating airport sushi at JFK, headed to a pitch in Austin, when my name hit the Forbes 30 under 30 list. I cried in a Hudson News bathroom stall, called Jenna, and asked if it was normal to feel terrified of my own success. She said, absolutely. Keep the fear, it's cheaper than consultants. But pride is a funny fuel. After the Forbes splash, I needed somewhere quiet to think, to breathe beyond venture decks and KPIs. That's how a weekend trip to North Carolina's Outer Banks turned into the next chapter of this saga, a windswept stretch of sand, a half-abandoned mansion, and an idea so reckless even I hesitated. Trust me, you'll want to hear how a storm-damaged house called Shoreline Haven became the ace up my sleeve, the very deed that froze my parents in their tracks. Stick around. The real twist is coming. I landed in Raleigh on a Friday night with one goal, 48 hours of beaches and barbecue before the next funding sprint. But the weather app said thunderstorms, so I rented a beaten-up Jeep and pointed it east, chasing clear skies along Highway 64. 3 hours later, I rolled into the Outer Banks, windows down, sea salt thick as caramel on my lips. I'd never heard of Bogue Shores Realty, but their last-minute listings were the only ones under $1,000 for the weekend. One name jumped out: Shoreline Haven, storm-damaged, enter at your own risk, oceanfront, 8 bedrooms, 2,500 square feet of could be something. The place looked worse than the photos, siding peeled like sunburn, a toppled live oak limb punched through a second-floor window, and condemned tape flapped from the porch rail. Perfect. I've always believed abandoned things have secrets. You just have to listen. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and seaweed. Water streaks scarred the drywall, but the bones were solid: heart pine floors, coffered ceilings, a library with built-in shelves begging for second chances. I was pulling boards from a French door when an elderly neighbor shuffled over, brandishing a flashlight and curiosity. Hurricane Dorian knocked her sideways, he said. Bank's been trying to unload it for pennies. Pennies? My Series A was still warm in the account, By Monday morning, I'd tracked down the bank's asset recovery officer, a guy who sounded exhausted and grateful in equal measure. He offered the property for $680,000 as is, no contingencies. In Charleston real estate math, that's a starter condo. Here it was 8 bedrooms of redemption. I wired 10% earnest money before lunch, forming Seaglass Ventures, LLC that afternoon. Why hide my name? 2 reasons. 1. Robert Harper reads the business pages like scripture. If he caught wind his wayward daughter was playing Monopoly with real deeds, he'd swoop in just to veto it. 2. Anonymity is leverage. The world bargains differently with ghosts. Renovations started the following week. I hired local crews, paid them above market, fed them shrimp burgers from Big Oak Drive-In, and kept every receipt in an encrypted vault. We swapped broken windows for hurricane-rated glass, reinforced the pilings to FEMA code, and installed a rooftop array that cranked out enough solar juice to run the place off-grid. My CFO called it obscenely unprofitable, but she smiled when she said it. We both knew goodwill compounds faster than interest. For months in, Coastal Living ran a feature on historic rehabs. Shoreline Havens before and after shots snagged the cover. The phone rang off the hook. Wedding planners, corporate retreats, even a Netflix location scout. I took a single booking, 1 week in July, $15,000, no questions asked, figuring the place deserved a dress rehearsal. I almost spit out my coffee when I saw the reservation name, Robert Harper. Dad must have combed the coast for a gold-plated backdrop to impress whatever investors he needed to placate. The irony tasted sweeter than key lime pie. My property manager software showed he'd wired a full deposit, non-refundable. That's when it hit me. The reunion I'd been excluded from was about to unfold in my living room. And my parents, who once told me homes are assets, not emotions, were about to discover the difference in spectacular fashion. So I let the booking ride. No cancellation. No warning. Just a silent countdown to a family fireworks show money couldn't buy. Buckle up. The storm hasn't even rolled in yet. Dad's Escalade showed up first, black, spotless, South Carolina plates gleaming under the salt-kissed sun. He rolled into the circular drive like a senator arriving at a fundraiser, phone glued to his ear. A white Sprinter van followed, packed with Mason's craft cocktails on tap and Olivia's ring lights. Last came a rental box truck full of family reunion decor, which, judging from the movers' grunts, weighed more than the Liberty Bell. I watched from the dunes behind a pair of Ray-Bans, heart-punching ribs in 5/4 time. No one knew the owner of Shoreline Haven. My property manager, Josh, handled keys through a lockbox. Josh thought I was the investor who never visits. Worked for me. I'd rented a modest cottage 2 streets over, perfect vantage point, but seeing the Harpers pile out felt like pressing on a bruise just to prove it's still sore. Inside, Mom breezed through the foyer, silk scarf fluttering like a campaign banner. We'll need fresh peonies in every vase by tomorrow, she told the caterer. Robert tapped at the crown molding and whispered something about flip potential to a silver-haired man in loafers. Must be the buyer he'd lured here. My parents were planning to sell my house before the family barbecue sauce even hit the grill. Anger flared, but curiosity won. I slipped into the back patio crowd, disguised by a logo cap and a clipboard. Contractors assume anyone holding paper belongs. From 10 feet away, I heard Dad brag, "We secured the place at a distress discount. I'll clear 7 figures once the buyer signs Monday." Distress discount. Interesting phrase for a cash offer from your disowned daughter. Dinner that night was a practice run for Saturday's grand feast. Long teak tables, Edison bulbs overhead, oysters on ice. I kept my distance yet close enough to hear Linda float the lie. The owners live overseas, Swiss or Swedish, something like that. Half the cousins nodded, half scrolled Instagram. When Olivia whipped out her phone for a house tour reel, I almost sprinted over. Instead, I emailed Josh, no interior shots on social media, contractual privacy clause. 10 minutes later, he forwarded Olivia a politely terrifying legal note. She pouted, video killed. Small victories. Mason cornered Dad by the wet bar. You sure about unloading this quick? Market's heating up. Robert shrugged. Timing is everything. Haven't I taught you? Hold too long, you get burned. The irony nearly knocked me off my sandals. Friday morning, boxes of monogrammed reunion swag arrived. Harper Heritage t-shirts, golf hats, a banner reading Family Tides, past meets present. The printer had forgotten me again. 40 names, no Sydney. I pocketed one hat anyway, because petty is free. After lunch, the buyer toured with a structural engineer. They praised the solar array, the reinforced pilings, the reclaimed wood accent wall I'd installed myself. Dad took credit for the forward-thinking upgrades, and my jaw cramped from clenching. The engineer flagged a minor roof vent issue cost maybe $400. Robert exaggerated it to $5,000 in urgent repairs, shaving dollars off the deal like Parmesan. That evening the local news blared a tropical storm watch, potential upgrade to Hurricane Helena. Mason proposed moving the reunion inland. Robert waved him off. Forecasts shift. We'll be fine, place is hurricane rated. If only he knew who'd paid for that rating. I spent twilight on the empty beach, letting Atlantic foam cool my ankles, plotting the reveal. Should I wait for closing day? Crash Saturday brunch? Or let Mother Nature cue the climax? Across the dunes the house glowed warm, full of chatter that once included me. A gull cried overhead, like a laugh that turns into a cough, and I felt the weight of every group chat silence. Decision made. Saturday at high tide, family assembled, investor present, that's when I'd pull the rug. Give them one perfect photo op before the flash burns. I walked back to my rental, opened the deed, and sighed at my own signature. Sydney A. Harper, Managing Member, Seaglass Ventures, LLC. Tomorrow, they'd learn the LLC wasn't Swiss, Swedish, or for sale. And a storm named Helena was about to make sure nobody missed the headline. Saturday morning cracked open with a red sky warning NOAA calls sailors regret. Helena had bulked up overnight, from mild tropical tantrum to Category 2, winds clocking 105 miles an hour and climbing. Outer Banks emergency alert pinged every phone in a 10-mile radius at 7:14 a.m. I pictured Dad squinting at the push notification like it was a spam coupon, then brushing it aside for his itinerary. By 9, the reunion brunch was in full swing, coastal chic outfits, bottomless Bellinis, the Family Tides banner billowing, just enough to look intentional. I lurked near the dune path, tracking barometric pressure on my smartwatch, 982 millibars and falling fast. Between bites of lobster frittata, guests compared flight change fees. Robert waved off their concerns. Helena's a paper tiger, he declared, quoting a meteorologist he'd found on Twitter. Helena growled her rebuttal at 10:37. A 60 miles per hour gust ripped the banner clean off and sent it cartwheeling into the pool. Table linens took flight. Mimosa pitchers toppled like dominoes. Screams, shattering glass, then stunned silence. Mom clutched her sun hat with both hands. Olivia's ring lights crashed, shattering into LED confetti. Someone yelled, "Is this place even safe?" Dad straightened, ready with reassurance, right as the power cut. The sudden vacuum of noise was louder than the wind. Refrigerators dying, ceiling fans stalling, Bluetooth speakers choking mid-chorus. Only the storm remained, rattling every window like an overdue bill collector. I'd predicted the grid would fail. Coastal substations are as resilient as paper umbrellas. But Shoreline Haven wasn't on the grid anymore. That solar array mattered now. I texted Josh one sentence, switched to island mode, lock keypad. Battery reserves kicked in. Interior lights flickered back to life while the rest of the block stayed black. Guests gasped, half relief, half iria. Mason tried to lighten the mood. See? Dad thought of everything. Robert nodded, soaking in credit he hadn't earned. I counted to 5, watched humility fail to arrive, then pocketed my phone. Time for Act 2. Emergency sirens wailed from town, urging a mandatory evacuation ahead of noon high tide. The buyer's silver sedan sped off the driveway, fishtailing through sand. So much for Monday's signing. Cousins scrambled for suitcases. Mom begged the caterer to pack leftovers to go, as if shrimp cocktail could outswim a hurricane. That's when Helena's main band slammed ashore, horizontal rain like gravel, gusts punching at 110. Patio doors bowed, surf exploded against sea walls, and a rogue deck chair speared a first-floor window, spraying saltwater across heirloom rugs. Panic detonated. Dad shouted orders nobody obeyed. The house creaked but held. I stepped through the foyer, finally shedding the disguise. "There's a reinforced storm shelter downstairs," I announced. "Follow me if you want to keep those designer shoes dry." 30 pairs of eyes locked on mine, confusion first, recognition second. Olivia's lips formed my name, but no sound came out. Robert blinked. "How do you?" "Later," I snapped. The stairwell's steel-framed and the hatch seals airtight. Move. They moved. Fear is the ultimate project manager. In 5 minutes, I had 3 generations of Harpers huddled in a bunker they didn't know existed because I'd poured the concrete myself. Backup batteries hummed, air filtration kicked on, and a crimson emergency bulb painted every shocked face the same guilty shade. Mom finally found her voice. "Sydney, whose house is this?" Lightning cracked overhead, answering for me. I held up the laminated deed like a boarding pass to their own reckoning. "We'll talk ownership once the wind dies down," I said, heart steady for the first time all day. "For now, welcome to my safe room." The red emergency bulb hummed overhead, casting everyone in a horror movie glow. I slipped the deed into my jacket and folded my arms. "So, any questions?" Dad recovered first. Straightening his Brooks Brothers collar like authority was a necktie he could tighten. "Sydney, this is reckless. Do you realize the liability?" "Liability?" I laughed. "You rented a condemned house you planned to flip for quick cash." "The only reason it's hurricane-proof is because I poured every Series A penny into those pilings. You're standing in a bunker rated for a cat 4. You're welcome." Mom's composure cracked. Mascara pulled at the corners of her eyes. "Sweetheart, we didn't know. Your father's investments, they soured when interest rates spiked. We were upside down on 3 properties. The reunion was our chance to impress a buyer and patch the hole." Mason cleared his throat. "It's worse. My funds drawdown triggered a margin call last week. Selling this place would have kept Dad's credit line alive." Olivia tried to film, but I raised a hand. "One clip hits TikTok and the cell signal in here gets jammed. Non-negotiable." She lowered the phone, cheeks flaming hotter than the emergency light. The silence that followed felt like vacuum-sealed guilt. Years of family chat bubbles disappearing, birthdays skipped, graduations ignored, all bottled up in 200 square feet of reinforced concrete. Dad exhaled, the fight draining from his shoulders. "I was proud of you once. But when you chose apps over law school, I panicked. Thought you'd crash and burn. I figured cutting you off would force you back on track." "Spoiler alert," I said, tapping the steel wall. "I built my own track." Mom reached for my hand. I let her. "We were wrong to freeze you out," she whispered. "But we're drowning, Sydney. If this buyer walks, we lose everything. Your grandfather's house, college funds for the cousins." I pulled away gently. "You already lost me. Everything else is collateral damage you created." Their faces tightened, but no one argued. Mason looked up. "What do you want? A revenge selfie?" "A press release. I want accountability," I said. "Public apology, full acknowledgement that you disowned me, and new governance. This property transfers to a family trust, 1 share, 1 vote. No unilateral sales. 10% of future profits into coastal resilience grants." I paused. "And my name goes back on every group chat." Olivia blinked. "That's reasonable." Dad swallowed. "You'd bail us out after all this?" "I'm not bailing you out," I corrected. "I'm investing in a family that either grows up or goes broke. Decide." Before anyone could answer, the bunker's intercom crackled. Storm surge crusting. Shelter sealed for 6 hours. Another crash echoed above, probably the dining room chandelier meeting hardwood. I glanced around the room. Looks like we've got time to draft terms, I said. And maybe, finally, to talk. Their nods were small, tentative, like kids agreeing to rules they should have learned years ago. Outside, Helena kept howling, but down here the only thing breaking was old pride. Whatever came next would be written long before those doors opened. 6 hours in a bunker is enough time to debone a family story down to the marrow, especially once the cell service blinked back. Around hour 2, everyone's phones buzzed in chorus. AT&T must have rerouted towers after the worst of Helena passed. Olivia glanced at her screen, went pale, and turned it toward us. Trending tab, #HarperReunionGate, 47,000 tweets and climbing. Somebody up top had captured the moment the banner ripped away, mashed it with footage of guests screaming, and added the caption, "Rich family rides out hurricane in mystery mansion. Who really owns it?" The clip had been on Olivia's drafts. Apparently, TikTok autosaved before she killed the upload and some algorithm necromanced it. Now the internet wanted answers. Dad groaned. Publicity is the last thing we need. He tried calling his PR guy. Straight to voicemail. Storm knocks out vanity first. Mason opened his Bloomberg app. Harper Group bonds had dipped 3% on rumor of a liquidity crunch. We could be junk by Monday, he muttered. I sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping bottled water, watching their world tilt. Mom whispered, "Sydney, please, how do we contain this?" "You don't," I said. "You redirect it." I opened my laptop, battery at 59%, enough to weaponize Wi-Fi once the network stabilized. We'll craft a statement. Family sheltering in our solar-powered, hurricane-safe home. Proceeds from future rentals will fund coastal resilience. Give the internet a hero narrative, not a scandal. Olivia perked up. A redemption arc, audiences love those. Dad bristled. You're proposing we let the world know you own this place and we're broke? I'm proposing transparency, something we've never tried. Besides, I added, county records will show ownership once courthouses reopen. Better it comes from us. Mason nodded, pragmatism overriding ego. Markets hate uncertainty. A candid statement could stabilize bond spreads. Mom squeezed my arm, a small thank you she didn't know how to say out loud. We drafted on Google Docs, line edited between wind gusts. Dad balked at the apology paragraph, admitting fault invites lawsuits, but I reminded him the lawsuits were already waiting. The buyer could sue for breach of contract, guests for negligent safety if helmets had flown. Honesty was cheaper than litigation. Halfway through draft 3, the emergency hatch beeped. All clear. The wind had calmed to a rattled exhale. We climbed the stairs to daylight, or what passed for it. Dining chairs floated in a foot of seawater. The grand piano listed like a capsized yacht, but the house still stood, generator humming steady. Helena had thrown her hardest punch and missed. While the family salvaged luggage, I stepped onto the porch for a cell signal. 5 bars. I hit upload on our statement, tagging every major news outlet. Within minutes, like snowballed. Comments split between gutsy move, Sydney, and eat the rich. Par for the internet. More important, Bloomberg terminal flashed green, Harper bonds inching up 0.5 point. Then came the sheriff's SUV crunching over debris. Deputy Morales approached in rain gear, clipboard in hand. We've had reports this property was listed for sale without proper title. His eyes flicked to Dad, then me. I produced the deed. Morales scanned it, then handed Dad a citation for unauthorized brokerage activity, $5,000 fine. Dad signed without protest, pen trembling. Shock? Check. Public scrutiny? Double check. Now fan simmered inside him, but it had nowhere to go except into acceptance. He turned to me. The trust arrangement, does it stand if we're under investigation? It stands because I stand, I said. And because the internet now sees this house as a climate-resilient landmark, not a flip. I nodded toward Olivia, already live on Instagram, explaining how Shoreline Haven would host community hurricane prep workshops. The comment hearts fluttered like Mardi Gras confetti. Mom approached, voice soft. Sydney, for the press conference tomorrow, will you stand with us? Only if you stand with me, I replied. Full circle. She looked around at the wreckage, at cousins mopping saltwater with monogram towels, then back at me. We will. The deputy cleared his throat. Y'all need a safe place tonight. Towns, set up cots at the high school. I shook my head. This house is safe and powered. Community centers for folks who don't have reinforced bunkers. We can offer hot showers and charging stations. Morales smiled. Generous. I'll spread the word. As he drove off, Dad extended his hand, an olive branch carved from pride and necessity. I took it, not because he deserved instant forgiveness, but because leadership sometimes looks like grace under freelance Wi-Fi and hurricane debris. Behind us, Olivia's live stream count hit 80,000. Sydney, she whispered, they're calling you, the stormproof startup queen. Great, I said. Let's make sure the Crown funds sandbags, not tiaras. The real negotiations, profit splits, governance charters, restitution, would come at dawn. But tonight, amidst ruined linens and viral hashtags, the Harpers finally shared one roof on equal terms. Shelter first, story later. Dawn found us gathered on the warped veranda, salt mist hanging like unfinished sentences. The house smelled of wet cedar and regret, but the power still hummed, and that mattered. I laid out printed copies of the Harper Family Resilience Trust, 10 pages, plain English, one signature block per adult. Clause 1, no asset may be sold without unanimous vote. Clause 2, 10% of net proceeds to coastal resilience grants. Clause 3, Sydney A. Harper holds veto on any structural change until 2035. Dad's pen hovered. A veto for 10 years? Call it training wheels, I said. You taught me that inexperienced managers need guardrails. Welcome to the class. Mason scanned the payouts table, then nodded, pragmatic to the bone. Olivia asked if the grant line could fund hurricane prep content for her channel. Cross-promo counts as education, I shrugged. Win-win. Mom signed first. If transparency saved us once, maybe discipline can keep us saved. Her voice cracked on discipline, a word she'd reserved for my wardrobe choices back in Charleston. Dad lingered the longest. His signature was always bold, a flourish underlined twice. This time the flourish trembled, but it landed. He slid the pages to me. I'm trusting you with our legacy. You're joining mine, I corrected, pressing the trust into a fire-safe box, symbolic and literal insurance. Next up, the apology live stream. We set an iPhone on a tripod amid overturned deck chairs. The chaos made the sincerity unavoidable. Dad cleared his throat, facing 85,000 live viewers. Yesterday, our daughter sheltered us in the very home we failed to acknowledge was hers. We're sorry. He glanced at me, no script, just truth, and continued. Going forward, the Harpers will invest in protecting, not exploiting, this coastline. The chat exploded with clapping emojis and skeptical side eyes, but bond spreads narrowed another quarter point in real time. Mason flashed me a thumbs up. Finance speak for good job, kid. An email pinged. The county offered a tax abatement if Shoreline Haven hosted quarterly evacuation drills. I accepted on screen. Viewers loved it. Someone commented, "Stormproof startup queen delivers again." Cute, but I wasn't here for crowns. By noon, FEMA trucks rumbled past, distributing tarps. We turned the driveway into a charging station, fired up the outdoor grill, and plated shrimp tacos for neighbors who'd lost roofs. Dad manned the spatula, first honest sweat I'd seen him break in years. While cousins handed out bottled water, Mom slipped beside me. Robert wants to rebuild the old Charleston place with solar. Think you can spec it? I smiled. Send the blueprints, Mom. I'll add guardrails. One storm left, but another still simmered. Forgiveness isn't a press release, it's a construction project. And the toughest beams go up in part 10, when we find out whether apologies can survive the calm. Stick around, we're framing a new foundation next. A week later, the beach dried out, but something else stayed soft, my parents. Not perfect, not even predictable, but trying. Dad forwarded me contractor bids for Charleston's solar remodel, asking which firms were less likely to cut corners. Mom sent me a photo of a framed news clipping. Startup founder turns family estate into storm shelter. She hung it where her pageant crown used to be. Group texts started trickling in again. Mason posted reunion photos with the caption, "Every family has a Category 5. Ours has a Sydney." Olivia asked to co-host a live stream on hurricane prep. I agreed, so long as she didn't autofilter my face. Forgiveness didn't come from a hug or a headline. It came from the sound of my last name being spoken without tension. From hearing "we're proud of you" with no asterisk. From sitting at my own table, no longer fighting for a seat. That beach house was never just property, it was proof that your worth doesn't vanish when people stop seeing it. That building boundaries doesn't mean building walls. And if you've ever been underestimated, exiled, or erased, remember this. Sometimes the best revenge is holding the deed and choosing grace anyway. If that hit home, do me a favor, smash that like button. Drop your story in the comments and share this with someone who needs a reminder that being written off doesn't mean you're done. Because sometimes the quietest comeback echoes the loudest. Subscribe for more real stories about rising, rebuilding, and rewriting your worth, one chapter at a time.